Hey everybody, it's Kyle. Hey, when I was a kid, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and we had family, my dad and mom's family, that lived down in South Texas in a town called Beaumont, kind of a coastal town. And it was about 300 miles from our home. And so every summer we would take a trip down to see our family. And you should know this, my dad was a really kind of a horrible mechanic. He's the only guy I ever knew that would work on a car with a brick and a hammer. Horrible mechanic. And the car that we had most of my childhood was an old station wagon. You know what I'm talking about, the kind that had the back seats that were in the way back that faced the wrong way, and it wasn't a very good running car either. It kind of made a noise like this when it accelerated. It would go. It was just horrible, right? I'm sure it wasn't really hitting on all 8 cylinders or 6, whatever it was. Anyway, it seemed like every summer when we went down there, we would break down. And I'm not kidding you. It seemed like every time we went. We'd drive 3 or 4 hours. It was a 6-hour trip. I remember that vividly. We'd drive 3 or 4 hours and then we'd break down. And we'd be on the side of the road somewhere in the middle of the country, or off the side of the freeway. And after a while it got to where it started to bug me a little bit, and I remember one time I said to my dad, we're broken down on the side of the road, and I said, why do we do this, Dad? I mean, we're gonna break down and we're gonna sit here for 4 hours while Uncle Mike drives up from Beaumont and picks us up and helps us get our car started with baling wire and duct tape, and then we drive the rest of the way down to Beaumont. And my dad said, you know what? It's just a trip until something goes wrong, and then it's an adventure. And I don't recall a lot of the trips to Beaumont. We didn't do anything extravagant. The trips that I do remember are the times that we broke down and we found things to do for 3 or 4 hours on the side of the road as a family. One time my brother had brought a fishing pole, and we saw a pond not too far away, so we hopped over a fence. I'm sure we were on private property, and dug up some worms and started fishing and started catching fish. And we had so much fun doing that. Or one time we were next to a field with a bunch of cows that looked like they were a quarter mile away, and you could see them over there. And my dad walked over to the fence and started mooing. And you see how the cows look. And he kept mooing. And within 10 minutes, every single cow was lined up on the fence mooing back at my dad. Or another time we broke down, and I'm telling you, we broke down way too often. And we found a 2-liter bottle, or I think it was a milk carton. And we set it up on a pole about 15 yards away. And my dad said, if you knock it off before I do, whoever knocks it off gets $1. $1 was big money back then. And he would let us throw rocks at it for a few minutes, and then he would pick up a rock and he would knock it off first try. My dad was always so accurate, so he never ended up paying off anybody. But those are the events that I remember. More than anything, I remember one time we broke down near a school, and there was a field there. And so we decided to play a little football. And we were playing, me and my brothers and my dad, and I went out for a pass and I looked over my shoulder to catch it, and I ran into a tetherball pole. You know what I'm talking about? Bing! Right? I mean, it was horrible. I mean, smacked my head real hard. They picked me up. But those are the events I remember about the trip, and I remember them with joy because my dad made it fun. It's just a trip until something goes wrong, and then it's an adventure. And I remember using that and making that kind of a key part of my life as I've grown up. When things go wrong, sometimes people tend to start freaking out. My oldest of my 2 sons on the spectrum recently graduated high school. And we couldn't tell if he wanted to walk or not with a class because he had trouble telling us. Well, turns out he did want to walk with the class, and he was going to walk with the class, and they didn't set up a chair for him. And his teachers and the principal and his counselors were starting to freak out because they thought he was going to have a meltdown. And I started laughing, and they said, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Well, it's just an event until something goes wrong, and then it's an adventure, right?" And we resolved it, and we figured it out, and he got to walk, and everything was fine. But freaking out doesn't help, right? Getting upset and frustrated doesn't help. What does help is realizing that when things go wrong, there's an opportunity there for excitement and something different and something lasting that you can stick with you if you manage it right with the right spirit. Hopefully that's helpful. It's just an event until something goes wrong. Then it's an adventure. So let's take those opportunities when things go wrong to make them memorable events by the way we act as parents, by managing things in a way that's best for our kids and for ourselves and for our families. And let's make this stuff as fun as we can. And I know if we do that, we'll have great success. Hopefully that's helpful. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.